These are the 6 things every DM must talk to players about character death before a D&D campaign starts. See if you agree with me. Character death is a central part of D&D, so much so that talking about it in session 0 should be a priority. Despite its importance, character death is something that even experienced DMs ignore or simply forget to talk about with their players, putting ourselves in tough or awkward spots, just like I did. After a few years away from the game, everything was going fine in my first 5e campaign. Until it wasn't. We were using a VTT and I managed to roll an unlikely 40 damage for an Ice Storm spell, the Big Bad Head cast, instantly killing 2 characters out of massive damage, something that the VTT automatically informed everyone at the table in real time. My players and I were all looking at each other in shock, and I thought, I guess I should have thought of a course of action for this situation. The first thing we should talk to players about is the importance of character death. The risk of death in D&D is essential to keep the stakes high within the game. It's that risk that adds tension and drama and brings the sweet taste of accomplishment when complex challenges are overcome. It's also that risk that regulates and prevents players from exposing their characters to foolish choices and overtly risky situations that wouldn't make sense in the adventure. And those things are essential for a balanced and fun game. Of course, the death of a character ends all the investment a player has put into it, from its concept and stats to its backstory and personality. It also interrupts an ongoing character arc development, and those things can leave a bad taste in its player's mouth. And both of those should be enough reasons to prompt a talk about character death in session 0. The second thing a DM should remember and openly discuss with their players is fairness when approaching character death. We should never intentionally try to kill characters. We should never cheat dice results on monsters' favors. We should never make it personal and target a particular character. And of course, we should never railroad character death. Having said that, we should challenge players with balanced encounters. As we're running a cooperative game, we should intentionally place players in scenarios where they must work together to overcome them. Opponents will have their own objectives, do their best to survive, and defeat their characters. If characters venture off on their own, ignore the signs of risky choices, or act foolhardy, the odds of death exponentially increase. So, be fully alert when we ask, are you sure you want to do that? The next thing we should talk to players, especially rookies, should be the rules concerning death. They should know, for example, that despite 3 failures on death saves required for a character to die, a natural one counts as 2 failures. And therefore, when the party's got a man down, they should heal or stabilize that character within the round it happened. Otherwise, a stroke of bad luck, where the character who would tend to its fallen companion becomes somehow out of reach, combined with a critical failure, can lead to disaster. And then there's instant death due to massive damage, as I would remember much later than ideally in that campaign of mine. That's a strong reason for players not to save spell slots for later and ensure that the party is always close to its full hit points before and during encounters. Spells, by the way, are another hot topic regarding death. Having spells such as Spare the Dying, Gentle Repose, or Revivify among low-level characters' spell list is taught on day 1 on Adventuring Survival 101. The fourth thing worth talking about is how to approach death saves. While a character is down, its player has no other action to perform besides rolling a death saving throw. One way to keep that player involved in the game is to prompt some role-playing along with each death save. If that sounds fun for the players in your group, of course. On a success, the player can describe memories that inspire hope and courage or someone or something to live for. On a failure, the player can describe memories that stir up shame and grief or an experience of weariness and despair. The fifth issue is closure. What should we do when death does come? Players might be heavily invested in their characters, and providing some closure is well deserved. At session 0, I discuss with my players 3 alternatives for closure and use as many as they like. First, there are the last words and thoughts. On a third death save failure, the character gets a deathbed pronouncement before the character passes on. The player also gets to reveal any thoughts the character had in mind and chooses not to speak. I like to apply that to NPCs as well, which usually leads to super cool death scenes. Then, players can role-play that character's funeral as soon as the adventure allows. For example, we can use a flashback artifice for the dead character's player to tell one or more party members what the character wished its funeral to be like. Surviving characters can describe how they organized the funeral and say their last words to their fallen companion. And even NPCs can show up and do the same. Lastly, there's the afterlife scene. We can decide what plane of existence the character's soul is taken to and create a situation for its arrival. That gives the player one last chance to roleplay the fallen character while interacting with other souls or creatures native to that plane, look back at its life, and ponder its afterlife. Finally, the 6th critical issue about character death is communication. We should have a one-on-one chat as soon as possible to understand the dead character player's desires regarding the campaign. Resurrection may be an accessible option in our D&D campaigns, but not rarely does a player prefer to use that moment for a fresh start. Whether because the player wants to preserve the character's death as a remarkable moment in the campaign, or as a fair ending to its journey, or simply because the player wants to explore a new character. We should openly discuss those options and let the player decide before the party wastes time pursuing resurrection options which would only disappoint the dead character player's wishes. That chat can be used to instruct the player about creating a new character and integrating it with the party, which also provides the player with something to do while we finish running the session where that character has just died. So, those are the 6 things that, if I had talked to my players before that first 5e campaign started, would have saved me a lot of improvising after turning 2 party members into little shards of broken ice. The importance of death, fairness, death rules, death saves, closure, and communication. What are yours?